Good morning. Good morning, beautiful people. Good morning. How are you doing? I hope you are doing exceptionally well. I genuinely do. I hope you are. And yes, here we are. We are here. Don't forget to hit the like button, says Healing the Silence. Good morning to you all. Let's go. Let's do this, people. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Shin. Oh, and Crazy Bunny. Wait, hello. There you go. Good morning, all. Good morning, all. Chris and Angie Mack and Drumstick and Tony and Marie and Julie C and Synchronized Souls and Delroy and Shells and Trudy and NWL Man. Even though you've now retracted your message, I saw them. It was about Jay Slater. And yes, we will be covering the disappearance of Jay Slater on here. I hope you are all extraordinarily and exceptionally well. It is Monday, June the 24th, 2024. It's just gone 1 minute past 9 a.m. British summertime in the UK. Good morning to you, Merv. Apologies for absence today as I have an appointment to keep. I shall catch up later. Merv, you are forgiven. Good morning, Gwyneth and Armand. And Sharon and Paul the Hat and Fran and Misty Beethoven and Space Cat and Jay and Humphrey and Beck and Mark and Emma and Evola's sunglasses. Hi from sunny Essex. It's sunny here too in southwest Greater London, Teddington. It's sunny at the moment. So hopefully that will remain. Good morning, Nikki from Plymouth, Devon. How are you down there? How's the weather, Nikki? Is it good? Is it good? I sincerely hope it is. Now, we are trying all manner of experiments around here because the thing is, before we actually go on to the actual live stream on YouTube, the quality is so much better. The moment we start live streaming, it's a bit insane and the quality is not as good as I'd like it to be. We will keep improving on that. Absolutely, we will. As I become more able to bring in the team that I want, that will improve. But as you know, this is a soft launch around here. Right, let's crack on. Let's crack on. What do I want to talk to you about today? Well, of course, thank you, first of all, for joining us. Thank you, everybody. Good morning, Eleanor and Anne. Yes, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the guest suggestions, the topic suggestions. Thank you for the donations. Always greatly, greatly appreciated. And some really good news. We're only on episode 9 of this, as I say, soft launch. Soft launch basically means, you know, just it in the raw, seeing how we're going to develop. That's just what it means, what we're doing around here. So we put clips all over social media, and Friday's show has now garnered close to 140,000 views across social media for our show and the clips of our show. How wonderful is that? Word is spreading, kids, which is absolutely wonderful. We love it. Pink Diamond said, I don't know about quality because I'm using Getting Ready for Work while I listen to this. As long as I can hear, I'm all right. Yes. Thank you, Fran. Absolutely. Good morning from Norfolk. It's nice and sunny here, is it? Wonderful to hear that. Whoop, whoop, Crazy Bunny. Absolutely. Good morning, Marsh Girl. The North Somerset coast. Absolutely wonderful. Yeah, Healing the Silence. Really, really thrilled with that. So, you know, I subscribe to that whole idea of build it and they will come. That's it. Right. And you're not going to get more kind of from the ground up than what you are watching right now. OK, there is no agenda. There are no people, you know, no companies inputting money saying you must talk about this or you must not talk about that. None of that. Right. The only censorship we have to adhere to is what goes on YouTube and sticking to community standards, which can be problematic for what we're talking about. But I always try and work around it. Right. Thank you, C Scotland. Thank you all. Thank you all. Let's talk about this Jay Slater story. It's a bit mad, isn't it? The level of cynicism online towards Jay and his family may be shocking to some, but the fact is you need look no further than Kate McCann and Karen Matthews to see why people are so cynical. People are tired, sick and tired of being taken for mugs in cases of missing persons. And unfortunately, Jay Slater's story does not stack up at all. It doesn't. There's so many questions. There are more questions than answers at this moment in time. So what we know, of course, is a 19-year-old lad went off to Tenerife for a holiday to go to the NRG Music Festival. He disappeared on that night. Apparently, he left with two men. And even though his friend Lucy May heard from him the following morning, he hasn't been seen since. So he's a 19-year-old lad from Lancashire. And as I say, so many questions. Why is his friend Lucy May giving interviews but hiding her face? Who is she? What does she actually have to hide other than her face? Right. And I've heard quite a lot of stories about Lucy, which I'm not going to broadcast at this stage. But isn't it interesting the different approach that British media has to this story than the Spanish press? The Spanish press and press around the world are actually highlighting some of Jay Slater's history. Well, British press aren't doing that. So that's interesting. But anyway, this weekend, the hunt for Jay went into what we were told was called the Badlands. This cannot get any more like a fiction or account of something, right? Apparently, also, Jay's Instagram account was hacked. We don't really know what's gone on there. So that's interesting. Was it hacked, or was somebody who has access to the account just logging in? This is the question, really. There are lots of questions around the GoFundMe account. Excuse me for being cynical again, but I remember when Madeleine McCann's No Stone Unturned fund was launched, just a few days after she was reported missing, and Kate's uncle was asked by a reporter what the money was for, and he said it was mostly for legal. First of all, if a person is missing, why are you setting up a GoFundMe or a public fund for legal? Well, we knew, didn't we? Afterwards, we saw quite clearly what that was about. It was about keeping Kate and Jerry McCann out of the frame and protecting their reputation, right? That's what happened. I made a film about it. It's called Public Relations and Saving Reputations. But there is something odd about this GoFundMe. The name has repeatedly changed in terms of who is the recipient of the funds. And it went from a target of £5,000 to a target of 30k. It has succeeded that target of 30k now, and it's over 30k. And, you know, a lot of people say she's given us Karen Matthew vibes. Karen Matthews was, or is rather, the mother of Shannon Matthews. And Karen Matthews, inspired by the money that was flooding into the Madeleine McCann account, staged an abduction of her own daughter with an extremely creepy man and hid Shannon under a bed for about 2 weeks, I think it was. And the fact is, that Jay Slater's mum, Debbie, she does give off Karen Matthews vibes. Yes, she does. It feels, remember when Karen Matthews was like, oh, my little girl princess and all this kind of stuff? Well, that's the kind of stuff that Debbie is also saying. Now, it could just be because they are both working class women from the north of England. They might share some characteristics, but his mum is not coming over well at all. That is a reality. She's not. And so people are wondering. Trudy says scripts have probably been written. Crazy Bunny said the family are being gifted accommodation and car hire. Don't need much money. Yes, interesting, isn't it? Also, guess what? Mark Williams Thomas has popped up. He being the cop who was supposed to have exposed Jimmy Savile. Also the same one who turned up to do with Nicola Bulley. You know, the thing is, it's not really a play in the fourth act until Mark Williams Thomas pops up and offers his help. So we've heard about where the phone was last pinged. You know, as I say, search teams are attempting to locate missing Brick teen Jay Slater. And it is interesting. There have been immense efforts. And what has irritated me greatly is Lancashire police have offered their help. And you've had a series of media commentators on TV saying, send the Brit police over. What? Because our police are so good, right? And let us not forget, Lancashire police couldn't even find Nicola Bulley on their own turf. It was left to the public to do that, right? So no, we won't be sending over the police. And by the way, the last time we sent over police was, to my knowledge, to do with Madeleine McCann, and they absolutely railroaded it. The police from Leicester Police, they did. They were there on behalf of the parents. There is no doubt about it. Gonzalo Amaral, the police chief coordinator, He remarked on this in his book, What the Leicester Police Really Had Come to Do. And there is a real arrogance when you see some of these ex-cops go on TV and send over the British police. No, we've got enough problems here and we need to pull it together. We need to pull it together without going and interfering with what other people are doing. And what is interesting, of course, is that we found out that the Spanish police are looking closely at all of the people who last had contact with Jay. And that presumably includes young Lucy. And I mean, I think we've all seen some stunning things online, haven't we? Regarding Jay Slater, certainly from the Facebook post. And I think Craig, good morning, Craig. I think Craig actually potentially found the best one. And this was from someone called Anthony. And it says, not trying to accuse Jay of something he didn't do, but is it possible that he got persuaded to join a terrorist organization like ISIS or Al-Qaeda, as I know they are short-staffed? Since there are Moroccans at play in a lot of the allegations. That is hilarious. Sorry, that is just hilarious. Yes, Pink Diamond. Didn't they send the cadaver dogs who found Madeline's scent? Yes, that's true. Martin Grimes from North Yorkshire Police and with his, phenomenal dogs went over. Yeah. Good morning, Millicent. Good morning. Trudy says 15 of his family and friends have flown out allegedly. What's happened? June, are you with us? June's with us, right? But the fact is, despite all of this stuff that's going on about Jay Slater online, I think most of us would like to see this lad found alive and well. But if anyone thinks they can stop us questioning, then they've got another thing coming. There are a number of British males who have gone missing abroad just this year, but we've only heard about 2, and you have to ask why 2 come to the public attention. And usually it's because there's some sort of agenda attached that can be taken advantage of, right? That's the reality. Let's bring in our first guest. Our first guest is going to talk to me about the mass cult of Taylor Swift. We seem to have been completely taken over with Swifties in London, right? And that includes from the political and royal establishment. And it is irritating as anything. Good morning, Sarah. Oops, is this bobbing around yet? My camera is bobbing around. I was just saying, we seem to have been taken over in London by, as you call it, the mass cult of Taylor Swift, and that includes politicians and royalty. Everybody, this is Sarah Newlyn, and Sarah is joining me to talk about this blooming Taylor Swift scenario. So let's just first of all look at the facts. The fact is, London will host more performances of Taylor's The Eras tour than any other city in the world, which in itself I think is interesting. Nearly 700,000 people will eventually attend. And we are told that Swifties are expected to boost the London economy by £300 million. Well, we shall see. As a consequence of that, our ever virtue signalling mayor, Sadiq Khan, has prepared a tube map which is sort of dedicated to Taylor Swift and her song, Sarah. Sarah, talk to us about Taylor Swift. What are your thoughts? It's everywhere. She's everywhere.
Well, yeah, you can't seem to turn on the TV or listen to anything on social media or see anything except Taylor Swift at the moment. It's very cult-like. We've got sort of serious journalists, supposedly, writing articles about how amazing this woman is and how absolutely out of this world these concerts are, and that it's bringing generations together. And I mean, she's being spoken about like some kind of goddess, and at the end of the day, she's a pop star.
She is. She's a pop star.
Exactly. And there's always an agenda when somebody gets talked up to this level. We know that. But it just seems that, all the adults have left the room. I mean, I remember being a kid and, going mad about bands and acts. But the difference is my parents didn't jump in on it and start saying that they loved them too. And start dressing like Taylor Swift to come to a concert.
Great point. Great point. We were
So yeah,
subjected to William dad dancing, weren't we? Videos of Prince William dad dancing with his children, a picture with Taylor Swift. Then there
yeah,
was Keir Starmer, who's looks like he's going to be prime minister in a couple of weeks'
yeah.
time. He stopped off from the election trail to rock up
To
at a
rock up
Taylor
at a
Swift concert.
Taylor Swift gig, and Tom Cruise has been there, and Paul McCartney's been there. It just all seems absolutely bonkers to me. And as I say, I think you know more than anyone, Sonia. There's always an agenda when someone's pushed this hard and this much. And these it's really wound me up. These journalists, or calling themselves journalists, that have written pieces really trying hard to somehow weave this idea that this is really highbrow, that she's some kind of absolute genius. And it's just not the case, is it? She's a pop star. And obviously you've got an election going on in America. And I think she's been saying a lot about the American election. And I heard that obviously YouTube friendly, I won't say the actual word, but she said something about the patriarchy, as
She
everybody
did.
seems to do these days,
She did.
without
That,
even really probably knowing what that even means. And do her fans know what that means?
yes,
It's just
exactly.
I'm
Not
very cynical, I know, but I
No,
can't
you
help
should
it.
be. You should be. You'd be ridiculous at our a level of maturity not to be questioning this,
Mm,
right? And so
absolutely.
let's just look at some of the facts here. Swift is one of the world's best-selling artists, 200 million records sold worldwide, and that was the last count as of
Mm,
2019. Right?
mm.
We're years along since then. She is the most streamed artist on Spotify, the highest grossing female touring act. It goes on. She is a multi award winner. But what
Yeah.
she writes, what she does as a music journalist, I see absolutely what she does. And that is she knows how to write hooky songs. She
Mm.
NLPs people. That's
Yes,
what she does. It is neuro linguistic
absolutely.
programming. That is what is taking place here. You only shake it off, blank space. These are very catchy songs. And
Yeah.
so that's part of it. But a lot of the imagery is also really odd as well. Did you see the imagery of her rubbernecked, thick-necked, lunatic boyfriend, Travis Kelce, when he came on stage last night and
Yeah.
carried her where she's like this, as if
Yeah.
she's weird stuff? What did
It's
you think
very,
about that?
very odd. I mean, there's a lot of this going on, isn't there, in the music world lately? I know I've seen lots of different. I mean, the Sam Smith concert was very satanic and really very, very weird. And yeah, I think there's a lot of this going on. It seems to be really pushing this idea of worship, isn't it? Like people should be worshiping these people instead of just enjoying their music and loving, you can be a big fan of somebody, but you don't have to worship them. That's really quite sinister, I think, yeah, and I think that there's a lot of that going on here. The more people are so many people don't think for themselves. And I think all of this, seeing somebody like Prince William with his children there, so many people are sucked in by that kind of thing, aren't they? And think, oh, well, if it's good for the prince, it must be good for us.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm very, very worried about the sinister nature of it and the way they can pull kids in this way. It's really, really sinister.
I've studied some of her videos. One, Bad Blood in particular, is so chock a block full of imagery that if anybody
Mm.
actually wants a good breakdown, I think there's a good breakdown online about Bad Blood, but it's all there. It's all
Mm.
there. The taking of the apple, the whole kind of like drawing on Adam and Eve, the
Yeah,
snake. There's just loads of imagery there. And I mentioned her
yeah,
boyfriend, Travis Kelce, because he is a global commodity. He actually he's promoted the Pfizer shots on his Instagram as one
well,
example. He's
there's a
also
surprise.
part. Yes, absolutely. And he's also part, he's also been part of advertising Bud Light. And that's just tanking. That's just absolutely
Well,
tanking after the whole Dylan
after the
Mulvaney. So
Dylan
they
Mulvaney
thought,
stuff.
obviously, you can see
Mm.
what they've done, can't you? They've gone from
Yeah,
Dylan Mulvaney, who is like very feminine, to Travis
yeah,
Kelce, who's very masculine, because they're trying to shore up. They
exactly.
realized they they they
The
they
huge
made an absolute
mistake.
mistake.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, it really saddens me to see this because, as a kid, you were a music journalist, Sonia. As a kid, I loved certain artists and, loved to got so excited about going to the concert. And I hate being this cynical, but there's just such a different vibe about all this than there was back then. This is sinister, and them getting involved with every part of the world. It's not just music anymore. You've
No,
got
no.
when you've got politicians and royalty going along to the gigs, it's a promotion, isn't it? It's not just them going for enjoying the gig. They're going as a sign and as a symbol of their sort of their following of this person. And yeah, I'm very upset about it because I think it's really sad, that music can be corrupted like this.
And just referring to what you said earlier, and that is she did say F the patriarchy, and that is
Mm,
to a lot of very young fans,
yeah,
right? And to her, I have no idea what the actual reasoning or agenda behind that was. It just seemed really, really childish, frankly,
yeah.
honestly, because she's done very nicely from the patriarchy, very
Hasn't she
nicely
just? Yeah,
indeed,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
but she also has, and I think that this is just kind of to what you were just talking about there. She has voter registration booths at all of her
At
concerts,
her
which
concerts.
allow her fans to register to vote. And of course, she's big Democrat, right? So
Yeah,
obviously it's pushing in a certain direction. But
of
that in
course.
itself is there's something sinister about that. Like you say, it's like
Very, very
pop music
much.
is just pop music. Why is she
Yeah,
using it for all these other vehicles? And that is because she herself is being used as a vehicle.
exactly. Of course she is. And the irony there as well, Sonia, I was thinking about was you've got the BBC currently, that awful Mariana Spring woman, and her Verify unit doing all sorts of stuff about our voters being influenced by online conspiracy and all this. Well, there wouldn't be much more of an influence than the biggest pop star on the planet having voting booths at her gigs. If there's any influence going on, I think, but BBC aren't mentioning that. Mariana Spring doesn't seem to see anything wrong with that. Yeah, it's really, really sinister. I don't think music should have anything to do with politics. And as you say, she's being used. I doubt she knows herself, but she's going to take the cash and her private jets and everything else and run with it. But yeah, it's a really weird situation, and I just seeing these journalists tying themselves in knots to make
Ugh.
serious connections with this. I mean, on one level it's really funny, isn't it? But on another it's very, very sinister.
Yeah, it's pitiful, isn't it? It's one
Mm,
thing if it's music journalists doing it, quite another if it's actually like supposed to be journalists. That in
yeah,
itself is very pitiful. But there is so
yeah,
much more to this that I do find really intriguing. Like even the headlines, like you say, the journalists. So the Daily Mail went all out, images of Swift with the royal family, royalty all round. So they have
yeah.
she's been crowned. She's now, isn't she? There's to me that's interesting what you said earlier, this whole thing of kind of like worship. But I also
Mm,
think that there's an element of like sacrifice from one era, it's called the Eras
era,
Tour,
yeah,
to
absolutely.
another era. And now
Yeah,
she has been crowned like the
yes,
Queen of Pop, hasn't she?
yes,
That's what's happened. I think
absolutely.
that's what this
I mean,
tour was
apparently they
about.
even played Shake It Out at the changing of the guard one day this last week, and yeah, absolutely. They are 100% saying that this woman is our, queen of pop, as you say. And yeah, the whole royalty thing, it's very odd to surround a pop star that way, very, very odd.
Very odd indeed. Let's talk about royalty because that's another topic of interest to you and to me as well.
Mm.
Sarah, if you had an opportunity, would you have a referendum on abolishing the monarchy?
100%. I think it's absolutely abhorrent that we don't have that discussion and that say in what goes on in our lives. Um, they have so much influence, no matter how much they protest that they don't. They really do have so much influence. And the way that people worship them is really bizarre to me anyway. But yeah, I really think given the amount of money that they, cost the taxpayer, I really think that referendum should happen. And I honestly do think lots of people are a bit frightened to say it, but I think a lot more people than would admit it don't think we should have a royal family anymore. It's such an outdated idea, isn't it? And this idea
Yeah.
that one family is just by right of birth is worth more than the rest of us. It's absolutely abhorrent, really.
It is it? And I can't. But people always come back with the same thing, and that is, I don't want a president plowed. We don't have to. It doesn't have to be
No,
either or. Really, people, it
exactly.
doesn't. We need to start thinking outside of the box,
Yeah,
right?
we
I I,
we really
I did
do.
see this really interesting thing on GB News. I know that sounds like something insane saying you see something interesting on GB News, but I did, and it was an interview with Bev Turner and a journalist from the Mail on Sunday. And it was last Saturday, Saturday before rather, when it was the Trooping of the Colours. And both of them were full
Mm,
of horrible hot air about how Kate is so glamorous on the world stage. And even if you don't like her, she's fabulous and everything. But this Mail on Sunday journalist slipped up and she said, we, the press, have made a pact not to talk about Kate. You've made a
wow.
pact. That's
Wow.
extraordinary. That's not how journalism works. What do you
No.
think of that?
That is quite frightening, isn't it? I mean, that's on a level with Emma Barnett that time saying that they wouldn't discuss vaccines, they wouldn't chat with anti-vaxxers whether they're right or wrong. I think she said,
Right,
again, just
right.
saying the quiet part out loud.
Right.
I'm
It's
sure.
interesting. Yeah, it is interesting
Yeah,
because that's that. I mean, I think it's a good insight into how it all functions.
yeah,
And our press, I mean, the thing is, as I looked at the Trooping of the Colours, I took images from the screen and the mall was half empty. I don't believe
yeah.
for a second that the Royals are as popular as we're told.
No, I completely agree. And, I mean, I put a few posts out about the Kate stuff that's been going on over the last few months. And you get such a variety of comments. But, I mean, you could say that X is a bit of an echo chamber, I suppose. But I get far more people commenting and agreeing with what I say on that particular subject than those. I mean, I get the nut job, the real massive royalists who just won't ever have a word said against them. You get them jumping on, don't you? But so much support also for when I shared an article that I'd written. It was actually May last year when the coronation was happening, and it was sort of my take on it all, and what a especially in this cost of living crisis, what a disgrace it is that that kind of money can be spent on such a nonsense, and I got so much support for that article. I think it was one of my most read articles actually, and one of I certainly got a lot of support for it. So I think you're right. I think if we had that referendum, I really do think more people than they realise would actually vote to abolish the monarchy. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us this morning, Sarah. We have a
Thank you,
link
Sonia.
to your articles, actually. We'll get that in the chat so everybody can
Lovely.
see. Not right now, everybody. Do not click on that link right now. Right. But point is that Sarah is an excellent writer and a really good observer of life. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining
Thank you,
us this
Sonia.
morning. Everybody, Sarah Newlyn.
Thank
And
you.
have a great Monday. Have a
You
brilliant
too.
week. Shake
You
it
too.
off. Take care.
Bye, Sonia.
Bye. Bye. See, that's the thing. We're all NLP'd, right? I'm NLP'd by Bloomin' Taylor Swift. Oh, yes, I am. It's horrendous. Before I bring in my next guest, by the way, I just want to refer to, Baby Spice. What happened to Baby Spice? Baby Spice, Emma Bunton, has come out. She's put out a video and she's talking about how it's for the trans youth, how we all see you, we hear you, we love you, we embrace you, all that sort of stuff that we've heard before. And I'm sure this is not at all related to the fact that her and her hubby Jade are now referring to their 13-year-old son as she. I'm sure it's not related to that at all. I incidentally named Baby Spice. This book even captures it, a book by Sean Smith, The Spice Girls. I'm going to read you the bit. Actually, there's like 3 pages of when I media tutored the Spice Girls. And it says, Virgin were trying to get more media coverage for the girls. The then head of press asked music journalist Sonia Poulton to interview them at a recording studio in West London. Sonia had been told by her friend, people don't get them. They think pop bands need to be all synchronized and dressed in matching outfits. Nobody in the press is interested. And that was what happened when I went to interview a media tutor to the Spice Girls in 1996. And it goes on, Sonia could immediately see how different they were. Victoria, for instance, was wearing a pencil skirt and a smartly tailored jacket, while Jerry was dressed in what appeared to be a teal green piece of Bako foil. They came across as a ragtag bunch, but were endearingly energetic. Sonia set about trying to identify them as individuals. Her conversation with the girls is fascinating. Mel B, she decided, was feisty and strong with lots of attitude. She told Jerry, "You're a vamp." Seaside Saucy meets exotic dancer. She thought blonde Emma was cute and needed protection. "I see you as the baby doll of the group," she said. And on and on and on into how I said Melanie C was the sporty one and all of that. So I came in and I kind of outlined the personas of the Spice Girls. And if I'd have known that Emma Bunton would be putting out videos like she has done this weekend, I would have left her there and then. Yes, I would. They were a manufactured band. And is that MCD there? I know somebody called MCD. That cannot be the same MCD. Spice Girls, a manufactured band. They were absolutely manufactured. They were put together like in a casting call. They didn't come together naturally. Oh, Pink Diamond says, "I think I'm too young for the Spice Girls, but I used to play pretend with my older stepsisters who loved them. I was always Baby Spice because I'm the youngest." Morning. Yes, I did name them, not Top of the Pops. Top of the Pops came up with Scary Spice, which I was actually opposed to. I said, so let me get this right. The only mixed race girl in the group is being called Scary. That when I heard that, I said, no, that's not me. Not me at all. I do not agree with that. We're going to have a really interesting conversation now. I say it's interesting because it's going to involve two knowledgeable people. And I'm very much looking forward to this because I'm going to take back role to a certain degree. Here he is. He's the very wonderful David Kurten. Good morning, David.
Hello, Sonia.
Wonderful to have you with us. And Jeffrey Peel. There's Jeffrey. Good morning, Jeffrey.
Good morning, Sonia. Morning, David.
Morning.
Wonderful to have you both. For anybody who's not familiar with these two wonderful gentlemen on our screen, Jeffrey Peel is a commentator. He's editor of the New Era magazine. David Kurten is also a commentator, and he's the leader of the Heritage Party. And Jeff came to me, and Jeff wanted to me to consider the idea of having a conversation to discuss the small parties and the independents who are playing a role in the general election. I thought it was a fantastic idea, Jeff, because one of the things that we've been doing around here, I am acutely aware that, you know, the uni-party system is alive and well as ever. And obviously all the major broadcasters give all of these same old people a platform, and they don't give people like David a platform. So what we've been doing in the run-up to the election is we have been profiling a series of independent candidates. And so when you suggested it, I thought that is so incredibly fitting. So Jeff, seeing as you suggested it, where would you like to start?
Well, yeah, just to echo what you were saying, I think it's really important. This is supposed to be a democracy, you know, and the assumption is that we all want to vote for the mainstream political parties that we all get to hear about. You know, suddenly Farage is back leading the Reform Party. The Reform Party is the major challenger. Where was the leadership election for the Reform Party? What say did the membership get in this process of reappointing Farage? Similarly, Rishi Sunak being appointed as Prime Minister, essentially without a popular vote even within the membership of the Conservative Party. So it shines a light on the nature of our democracy, the fact that we're not allowed to participate in a debate about where the country is going, the challenges that we have, but also the incredible mess that has been wrought on the people of the United Kingdom over the last 4 years. And Farage obviously wants to frame the Overton window, you know, in his particular way. You know, the narrative is now being defined as he being the major challenger. But of course, there's another narrative. There are people like David and independent candidates who are at the front of the protest marches over the last 4 years who say, we want to focus attention on other things. The chaos, the fact that there has been maladministration and corruption and overspending of taxpayers' money and borrowing and all of this stuff, which isn't even being discussed. And there are some wonderful candidates who are grounded in their communities. And I've been doing my bit, like you, to interview some of the candidates for the New Era. I interviewed Keith Tordoff recently, an independent up north in Yorkshire. Abby Maguire, who's a candidate probably on a different position in the political spectrum. But these are people who are grounded in their communities, who understand the constituencies, who haven't been parachuted in by the mainstream political parties, and wanted the debate to be outside of that context that we are given by the media and we're allowed to discuss, but we're not allowed to discuss all those other things that the candidates are raising. And David, as representative of one of the smaller parties who are contesting just over 40 constituencies, again, has a perspective which is different and just isn't being heard.
Thank you. That's fantastic intro. I think we've all got a brilliant overview from that. David, tell us how difficult it is being an independent candidate with the backdrop of everything that Jeff has just highlighted.
Yeah, it is really difficult. And you think that the system is weighted against you. I mean, for example, there have been these 7-way leadership debates where the mainstream broadcasters define 7 parties as the major parties. But we have more candidates standing than Plaid Cymru. But Plaid Cymru gets a seat at that table and we don't. And neither do the Workers' Party, with George Galloway's got more candidates than Plaid Cymru as well. Well, I'd be very different with him, in terms of economic policy, but we would agree on certain things that have happened in the last 4 years. I mean, not least the whole Ukraine situation and the Gaza situation as well. And obviously with the Heritage Party, we were against lockdowns and we were against coerced injections. So all of those things are not really being spoken about until a couple of days ago, when Nigel Farage suddenly changed his mind from everything the Reform Party has been saying over the last 2 years and says, oh, I'm now against the war in Ukraine. And he's getting all the attention for that. All the attention is focused on him, but none of the attention is given to me, George Galloway, other people, Piers Corbyn, who have been speaking against this for the whole time that the situation has gone on. So, we have the Party, and I think we have approved opposition, which the pressure valve, which is what I think Reform is, the Tory pressure valve. The attention is focused on them, but real challenger parties, like myself, the Heritage Party, we find it very difficult to get on the mainstream media at all. We're deliberately, not cancelled as such. Although I actually was cancelled today. I was going to go on to a mainstream broadcaster. I made an arrangement, and then they cancelled, and just this morning. So I think they found
Julia
out.
Hartley Brewer, was that?
That's right.
They cancelled you.
Yeah, they called me up. Well, yeah, called me up yesterday. Said, "Can you come on the show? We want to talk about Nigel Farage's comments on Ukraine." I said, "Yeah, absolutely. This is great." And then this morning, about 8 o'clock, I got a text. "Oh, sorry, we've rescheduled. We're dropping you from the show." So you can read into that what you like. I mean,
it's funny when you tweeted that, David. I saw that this morning, and I thought, "There's no way they're going to have you on." It's wow. That's just the modus operandi, isn't it? Wow. And as well as that, it's even the suggestion that they're going to have you on, and this has happened to me on numerous occasions. They tantalize you with the prospect, well, there's a bit of a breakthrough opportunity here, get to speak on mainstream media. And I mean, over the last 4 years, obviously prior to 2020, you and I were appearing regularly because there seemed to be a kind of debate happening, around politics and political issues. But of course, now what they do is they say, "Oh, we'll have you on," and then cancel you at the last minute. So it's a kind of double whammy, because you think you're going to be being given an entry, but of course then it's closed off to you. It's disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful. And Julia Hartley Brewer is right at the forefront of that technique. It's disgraceful what Talk TV are doing, and the fact that they seem to be just simply parroting the interests of the establishment.
Absolutely.
That is horrendous to hear that. I think that is so incredibly disappointing. And actually, I think it's very short-sighted of them, because I think, if anything, if 3 people on this screen have learned anything, and that is the world has become incredibly transparent over the last 4 years, and people are catching up, and they're catching up. And actually, Julia Hartley Brewer is part of a dying medium, and that is the reality. We know that for fact. So, Jeff, help me with this, because some people in the comments, there's a lot of people who are politically homeless. They they just don't feel that they can trust. This is no reflection on David, by the way. They're just in general politically homeless because they feel that they've been let down so badly, and they're worried that when they allow people into power, these people immediately become part of the globalist structure. But I think to a degree we're not helping ourselves by not supporting independence. Pick that up for me, please.
Yeah, I think we're in a really difficult situation. I can see, you know, I interviewed Bob Moran, for example, last week on my site, and he, I think, has been going through a similar process to many of us and many of your viewers as well, in that, what do we do here? Because the party political system is broken, and we can see that. And I think people can see through the nonsense narrative, you know, the fact that, Farage is galloping in as our savior because he happens to be, you know, echoing some of the points that we have been making over the last 4 years. So therefore, he's being presented as an alternative to the two-party system. But of course, it isn't an alternative at all. He is from the establishment. He's been spewed out of the establishment. And therefore, people are in this quandary. Well, what do I do? I can't vote for any of these people because they're clearly either the establishment or incumbent establishment, you know. And therefore, we need to be given an alternative. One is to spoil your vote. One is not to vote. But if you don't vote, this simply means that people get elected on a smaller turnout. You know, the result is exactly the same, even though the democratic process is stalled. So I think my rule of thumb, and I think David would agree with me because we've chatted about this, is that if there is no candidate on the list of candidates available to you in your constituency, you spoil your vote. You say, I'm not participating. Because at least it's some way of getting that message back. But if there is a candidate standing and you agree with broadly what they're saying, and they're an independent, or they're from one of the smaller parties and they're trying to break through the system, lend them your support. The more we can disrupt and the less we can participate in the system that has been defined for us, the better the outcome ultimately will be. This is about people power. This is the one opportunity that people have to participate in democracy. And essentially, it's being denied to us because we're being forced into making this ridiculous choice about these patently absurd political parties where the only defining characteristic of any of the politicians is self-interest. It is utterly disgraceful, and we must make a protest and we must make it heard. And the best way to do that is to vote accordingly for an independent candidate, a smaller party candidate who's from a party that's trying to make a difference. And David has shown in the past that he's willing to collaborate with other independents and people who are like-minded to try to break through this system. But he's being stalled at every opportunity, and it's disgraceful.
Yeah, it really is. David, tell us, first of all, I didn't realize you were standing as many as 40. I think that's a phenomenal achievement, actually. And the reason I say it's a phenomenal achievement, because these things are not cheap. You are a small party. This must have been hard work to be able to achieve that, David.
You know, it has been incredibly hard work. And since this surprise election was announced, I think it's just over 4 weeks ago, everyone has just pulled together just to get everything done. I've been so amazed and so grateful with all the people who are involved in the Heritage Party, standing as candidates, helping, donating little bits of money here and there. And we still have, you know, far, far less money than any of the mainstream parties. I mean, I think our total spend on this election is about £20,000. And a lot of that is people spending their own money on deposits and leaflets.
Wow.
I mean,
wow.
Whereas, you know, the mainstream parties have millions of pounds to spend. So it's very, very difficult for us. And of course, we don't get the airtime because we're not considered a major party. But, you know, what I've been saying as well, we got 41 candidates, and this is fantastic. And some people have stood up to the plate. You know, I've been saying all year, look, if you want change, stand yourself, stand in your constituency. If you want to have an alternative, you got to stand yourself. And we actually do have 4 or 5 people who've come in at the last minute and said, yeah, well, I'm going to stand myself. I'm going to join you, became a member, you know, did the interview, got through, and then did the nominations, and they're standing themselves. You know, Gary Conway, for example, in Southwest Norfolk, great man, and he's standing, and he's decided, yeah, he's going to step up, and he wants change, so he's going to stand himself, which is fantastic. And you know, obviously we got 41, which is incredible. We're in the top 10 of parties in the UK.
Wow.
The number of candidates standing, which is fantastic. But you know, I wish we could do more. You know, we need 15 times as many candidates for next time. But we're on the way. You know, it's incredible given that we only started in 2020. There was just me, and now there's hundreds of people, thousands of supporters and followers, and this is great. But yeah, you know, to echo what Jeff said, you know, obviously I'm biased, so I would say where the Heritage Party is standing, please do vote for us. But you know, we do have sort of, you know, informal arrangements with some other parties and independents. You know, in the locals, for example, Miri Finch, who you and I both know, she stood as an independent up in Kirklees. We deliberately moved our candidate so that she could have a free run at that election. And you know, there's other independents around that we've got arrangements with groups of independents, of Vote Life group of independents that are standing. You know, we're not standing against them, so you know, have a look and vote for them. And what I would also say is, I think if you're thinking about the long term, proportional representation is very important. So if you don't have a Heritage Party candidate to vote for, I would say vote for an independent or a challenger that supports proportional representation, because if there is a hung parliament here this time, you know, which is a possibility, I think then there will be a move to change the voting system to PR to make it fairer. And then parties like mine, the Heritage Party, will get a fair number of seats. You know, if we get 2% of the votes, we'll get 2% of the seats. If we get 20% of the votes, we'll get 20% of the seats. And that's how things need to change. So we break this Tory Labour monopoly or duopoly, if you like. You know, and obviously the Lib Dems and the Greens are very much beholden to the same agendas that they've got as well. So it's very difficult, but we just step up, and you know, we got to have a positive attitude. We're just going to soldier on, march on, and keep on going until we break through, and we will do it at some point. You know, I believe so. And
warrior attitude. You have to.
Attitude. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Jeff, I'd like to throw this to you really, is I think what the Heritage Party, and I think a lot of the time now with the independent candidates that we have, is they're tapping into actually the mood of the nation. And the mood of the nation, whichever part of the UK you are, is there is a pride in our heritage, and we shouldn't be running away from it. And I think that, again, is absolutely what David is tapping into. But because people are so sick and tired of the globalist agenda, and it's so apparent. And I give you an example. Oh, Chella says David Kurten is a true gentleman with a great love for his country. I wish him well. But one of the other comments that I wanted to reflect on, because I think it's a fair point, is Kat says, I have nothing against the 2 guest speakers, but voting is not going to help us out of where we are. Exposing a non-participation will. Jeff, the thing is that we can only do so much. You've already explained that, the issue of non-participation, and do that where they aren't standing independent candidates. But Jeff, what I really want to address is this whole issue of speaking to the nation, whichever part of the nation you are in the UK, and that is people are very interested in our roots and our heritage being acknowledged.
Absolutely, and you know, there's this idea, and I think it comes from America, that party politicians sort of represent or are channels for our viewpoints and so on, but that's not traditionally how the United Kingdom has worked. Our nation came as a result of our observance of common law, and that law was defined by individuals and, you know, lay judges and so on, defining the nature of our legal system. And it was based on fairness and decency and respecting people's property rights and all of this. And this idea that we have to depend on people from on high defining through statute law or, you know, acts of parliament how we should behave is not how we as a nation came about. It's what makes the United Kingdom a wonderful nation. And if we destroy that, we destroy the basis of our democracy and our legal system and our respect for each other. And that's how people need to think. It's about them. The power lies with them. It does not lie. It has been wrested from them by the political parties and the establishment. But the power ultimately lies with them. And in whatever way we can say we pay respect and regard for individuals within our constituencies who are doing their bit to give us a voice. We have to do that. We have to do that. It's because we're going to lose all of what makes this nation great if we forget about that ultimately we have the power. This is democracy, and it's our one opportunity to express our viewpoint and to put in a protest vote. And that means voting for an individual with individual free thought.
Fair point. I'm going to give the last comment to you, David. Tell us why we should vote for you or any of your candidates.
Yeah, well, I'll just quickly pick up on what Jeff says. You know, the individual liberties that we have, individual fundamental freedoms, that is fundamental to our nation and our society. But it is being undermined and it's being corroded by collectivism and cultural Marxism. And this has been happening over 50 or 60 years. And this is why I think we do need to vote, because if you don't vote, you are essentially giving consent to the Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, Green, Union Party to carry on the programme of collectivism, of wokery, of cultural Marxism, climate alarmism, and all the net zero stuff, and mass immigration, you know, which is destroying our nation because, you know, it's not controlled and so on, and you know, it's changing the fabric of society. All of these things we need to take a stand against, which I think you need to vote for the Heritage Party, which, as Jeff said, you know, as I've said, we'll defend our culture and our heritage, because our heritage is very good and it's based on common law, as Jeff said, and the parties that are there are globalist, collectivist parties who are undermining everything that we stand for. We want to restore our nation and give back the power of the fundamental freedoms that we have to the people. So, but if you don't vote, then you're not going to get what you want. So I would disagree with your last commenter and say, you know, I do understand your feeling. And I completely understand the parties that we've had in power for the last, you know, for as long as I've been alive, have been undermining our nation. But now we have an alternative. And, you know, there are other independents around that are alternatives as well. So please do take positive action to vote. It only takes 5 minutes to go to the polling station, cast your vote, put a mark on a paper and go away. It's not a big sacrifice. So it's better to do that than not do that, even if you go and spoil your ballot paper to make a statement. So please do go out and vote when the time comes. That would be my last and final message to everyone.
Well, good news. Peter has already just donated to your campaign fund while you've been on air. So that is fantastic. Thank you, Peter. That's really wonderful. We love that. And listen, thank you both so much for joining me this morning. I knew it would be a great conversation. Love hearing you both. This is David Kurten and Jeffrey Peel. And not only are they brilliant commentators, but they're both very talented broadcasters. And I love having them on this stream this morning. Take good care of yourself, both of you. Have a brilliant week. Thank you so much. Good luck, David. Good luck. I know you deserve it. All that hard work he puts in. Take care, Jeff. Speak soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
Sonia.
Bye. David. Bye. Yes, it's, you know, I really do take the point that they're both making. Unforeseen says, I will never vote for a right-wing populist. The thing is, Unforeseen, it's interesting you say that, because David and I've talked with him a lot. I think he is a great commentator, and I've often said to him, no, some of the things that you stand for, I absolutely disagree with. But the thing I like about David, really like about him, is he's an honest broker, right? He doesn't speak out the side of his mouth. He actually tells you, you know, things that aren't necessarily popular. Like he came out against kind of like the whole kind of gender agenda and everything very honestly, which would not have played well for him in many respects. We know that. Now, before I welcome in my next guest, let's look at some other things on the agenda. Or can I say that it alarms me that we are still living under the insidious measures of the Coronavirus Act. As my good friends at Stop Common Pass have pointed out, the government must draft primary legislation to repeal the Coronavirus Act 2020, which is still being used as a basis for the CPS to fine and imprison people for previous non-compliance. Then the Public Health Act 1984 requires urgent reform to stop this happening again. I agree. I love Stop Common Pass. They worked relentlessly and endlessly throughout C19 to raise awareness to passports, to digital ID and other matters. They were absolutely sterling and brilliant. Pink said, I would rather have a right-wing independent leader than a left-wing WEF leader, and I'm centre-left. Got you, Tor. Grand risings to you, DNS, aka Tim Foyle Kong. Great to have you with us. I heard an interview with Andrew Bridgen, former Conservative, now Independent, in which he makes some astonishing claims, including knowing names and places of people being trafficked. Claims he said he took to government and agencies and they were not interested. And when I heard that, I was like, what am I hearing here? Andrew needs to reveal the details of who wasn't interested. I am concerned about this, and I'll tell you why, because it has a sneaking, horrible sense of deja vu for me. People are telling Andrew Bridgen to name and shame the alleged traffickers, but please, 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 please be careful. This reminds me of the VIP abuse scandal, where people, including politicians, rushed in and suddenly the only people charged and convicted was a man claiming to have been abused. Andrew Bridgen's interview is alarming, and not everyone is convinced by him. But if he does nothing, then are we to assume that he has just like told us just for likes on this podcast? You have to take action, Mr. Bridgen. You can't just say these astonishing, shocking statements on podcasts and leave it there. No. The next step is to reveal the names of the people in government you took it to and they refused to act. That is the safest way around this, right? Other than going to the police and recording your conversation with the police about this. And it deeply, deeply concerns me, this interview, when I saw it. I was like, whoa, not sure about that. That really concerns me. Good morning, Robert. Hello from Holy Russia. Eleanor said he was MP in Leicester, and we know something funky was going on there during lockdown. Talk about MP for Leicester. Have you seen the lunatic Keith Vaz is back? He was kicked out, expelled from Labour recently. He's now standing for One Leicester Party in Leicester East. And at the weekend, he brought in Bollywood actress Shilpa Shetty to help his campaign. You're going to need a lot more than a Bollywood actress. Although, having said that, Leicester infamously was one of the first major multicultural areas in England. So actually Keith plays very, very well to the electorate there. And they seem to gloss over the fact, for example, that in 2016, a Sunday Mirror operation uncovered Mr. Vaz offering to buy coke for his male escorts. At the time, he was the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, and their job is to hold people to account, right? He ended up resigning, shocker. He said, those who hold others to account must themselves be held to account. Yeah, the thing is, though, Keith Vaz, is you've never been held to account, right? You are somebody who, who manages to flip-flop in and out of this. I'll address that, Synchronized Soul, in a minute. Bring me back to that. So we know that about Keith Vaz. We also know that he interfered into the police investigation, Wiltshire police investigation run by Mike Beale, to do with the allegations surrounding former Prime Minister Edward Heath. Yes, Keith Vaz interfered in that. Keith Vaz was originally brought in Parliament by Lord Daniel Jenner, and that he was taken on tour as a schoolboy because he was friends with Lord Janner's son, and Lord Janner was a great influence on him. And Keith Vaz also testified in the favour of Lord Janner. Lord Janner, under parliamentary privilege, denied being an extensive abuser at the care homes he was visiting. And Keith Vaz was one of the people who, you know, kind of signed off that speech. So Keith Vaz has been in Parliament for an awful long time. There's a huge amount of question marks around Keith Vaz, but he's back. And I would not be at all surprised if he gets voted back in. Now, Synchronized Soul, you are asking me, Sonia, what's your thoughts on fake Maddie being on Sean Atwood's channel? Actually atrocious. I'm sorry. Fake Maddie, as we know her, she's a young female from Poland. She came out claiming to be Madeleine McCann. No. And the only kind of thing that was interesting about it was a conversation that she had with, which I heard on social media, a conversation she had with Operation Grange. And Operation Grange said they weren't interested in taking her DNA, and loads of people come forward and they 100% knew that she wasn't Madeleine. And the reason they 100% know she wasn't Madeleine is because they know that Madeleine is not here. They know that. That is Operation Grange, £14 million in the whole British police investigation. But to go back to your question, Synchronized Soul, I believe that is the exploitation of a vulnerable young adult. She's clearly vulnerable. She clearly has some issues going on. She looks like the spitting image of her mother, and her mother is not Kate McCann. Sean and I go back a little way. Not a great fan of the content that is spewed out on that channel. It is a lot of the time they cover topics like Madeleine McCann, but without actually any great knowledge. And that is a reality. That is a reality. There you go. And but no, so in answer to your question, Synchronized Soul, I'm very sad to have seen the exploitation of another female on that pod. And I say another female because I infamously did a live interview with Sean Atwood when we used to work together. And I discovered in that live interview that he was taking pictures of a female who had been trafficked. He was taking nude pictures of her and putting them on a trafficking site. That was Sean Atwood. On that day, he told me that. I stopped working with him and never worked with him again. And that is that's the true story. And I still have that recording. And one day I might put it back out again. It was online for a while, but one day I might put it back out again. Certainly if these kind of stunts are being pulled, because this alarms me. You've got to have some care and concern about people's mental health and well-being. Yes, you have. Right. I hope that answers your question, Synchronized Soul. By the way, Boris Johnson is, of course, an absolutely horrible, reprehensible individual, and no doubt about it. But here's the thing that I discovered at the weekend, right? And as we know, he comes from a family that supports depopulation. But one of the things that people focus on often is his appearance and the fact that he always looks so scruffy and that his hair is always a mess. And it seems petty, right, when you think of all the other horrendous, objectionable things that this man has done. But people do focus on appearance. You're focusing on my appearance right now. Yes, you are. And that is the reality, because if you have eyesight, we live in a very visual world. And that is a fact. Anyway, I discovered that there is actually a syndrome called uncombable hair syndrome, and it affects people who look like Boris Johnson. Yes, really, including like Albert Einstein. It always appears to affect white men with white hair. And they can comb it, but it immediately messes up. Uncombable hair syndrome. It really is a real thing. What do you think about that? And just before I bring in our next guest, because I think it's, I want to mention this, I see that Derby County Council has a problem with somebody painting a St. George cross on a roundabout. Now, here's the thing. Why? Obviously, this is to do with football and the kind of nation's pride that some people have regarding that. But why is there an issue when we know that councils around the UK are spending thousands upon thousands to paint zebra crossings rainbow colour? Why can't we have a St. George cross on a roundabout? The zebra crossings are really problematic, the rainbow zebra crossings. They're problematic for guide dogs for the blind, and they're problematic for horses who do not wish to cross them. So, again, I think that's sneery. I think that's sneery, this whole idea that Derbyshire County Council has claimed that the makeover could distract drivers. Get a grip. Not at all. Don't believe that for a second. I think that is sneery. I think that is the Emily Thornberry approach of kind of like being sneery of anybody who has a St. George flag or white van men. And I hate that. It's snobbery, and unnecessarily so. And we don't like that. Got loads more to discuss, but I'm going to bring in my next guest. And hopefully she can connect this time, because we had difficulty connecting her before. But I think and I hope we will be able to connect her. Hello, Jackie. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Jackie, it was obviously meant to be this time.
Yeah, the planets aligned this morning.
Absolutely. Everybody, this is Jackie Cowie. And Jackie, I mean, I've been looking at your history. What an interesting history you have. So you're a former chiropractor, right?
I actually still am a chiropractor, although I don't see a lot of patients kind of for body work anymore. I found that over time, my toolbox expanded. And so those 20-minute appointments just weren't enough anymore to create the kind of transformational change that's possible.
Now, your idea of a transformational change is complete, isn't it? It's literally top to toe, and it's taking care of what's inside and what's outside. But one of the things that I'm particularly interested in that I heard you talking about is energy bodies, right? Is it 5 energy bodies that we're talking about? Talk us through them, because I know some of our viewers will absolutely love hearing about this.
Well, it's one of my favorite topics, so that's great. The energy bodies is a framework that came originally from the ancient Vedic texts. So in yoga, they would be called koshas, and they're often described like Russian dolls. So if you imagine that the doll on the outside has got the most dense energy, so that's our physical layer. And then the doll inside that is your energetic body. So the energy gets a little bit more subtle. And there's 5 bodies like that. So by the time you get to the doll on the inside, you're talking about really, really subtle energy. So all of them are speaking to you all the time. But you need to kind of understand how they're speaking to you so that you can take the appropriate action and change what you need to change.
Now, some of the things that you do that clearly helps get you in touch with that is, obviously, you use yoga. You use the Akashic records, and I think you say to overcome hidden limitations. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, I'm really, really keen to empower people. So while I love the Akashic records, they have been absolutely life-changing for me. I really want people to understand that they can do this. It's not anything special. It's not anything that only certain people can do. Your energy bodies are speaking to you all the time. And so just by dialing your awareness into that, you can pick up so much information. And that is the stuff, that's the feedback that we leverage into your breakthrough, into that big transformation that we're after. So when you work with your own energy bodies, sometimes you'll get to a point where you go, do you know, there's just a missing piece. I just can't quite put my finger on it myself. And then that's when we go in the Akashic records. They store literally the information of everything, every thought, every deed, every action. So when somebody's coming up against a certain block, or they've got a limiting belief that they just can't move past, they're doing the affirmations, they're doing the meditation, it's still not working. Then we go in the records and we find out when that started. So often it'll take me back to, 0 to 7, when we're really encoding all of those programs that we use now. It'll take me back to an event somewhere around that time where we encoded this limiting belief. So, for example, somebody recently, I went in, I was shown an image of him sitting on the floor in a nappy, 2 years old, and he was crying and nobody came. So in that moment, he encoded, I've been abandoned, I'm on my own, and I need to fend for myself. I was actually shown that his mom did come, but in that moment, he had already encoded that belief. And so that's been playing out in the background of his life this whole time. So we go in and we dissolve that.
that becomes the script for our life. And sometimes it's, what's important about that is sometimes, I mean, so essentially yours is like, for want of a better description, spiritual psychiatry almost in its own way, right? And I know that's not necessarily an accurate description, but it is about delving down and finding out about blockages, right? But in a kind of much more spiritual way. But the thing is that it's very, very difficult for some people because they know they have blockages, but what you're talking about there is sometimes they either have a half remembered, impression of it, don't they? So, for example, that child's mum did eventually come, but he had already sealed in him that I am somebody who will be abandoned, even at the age of 2.
Yeah.
How do you begin to unpack something that deep, Jackie?
Yeah. Well, we aren't going to remember that event. It's in our subconscious. And so that's why the energy bodies are so important, because they are showing you where these little unresolved issues are, things that are unprocessed. And often we miss it in the emotional energy, we miss it in the energetic energy, but then we feel it in the physical energy.
Yeah.
So often the only clue we have is, oh, I notice that I'm constantly tight all the time. I notice that I have hip pain, and I've done all the exercises, I do the yoga, and I still just have this hip pain. So once we have the hip pain and we have the pattern of, oh, you don't like to ask for help. I'm noticing that you over-deliver and you overcommit. Okay, so now we're putting that together in a pattern and we know where you're blocked. So that gives us the clue to where to look. And then we do the same on the way out. So we know that we've cleared this blockage, that energetic charge isn't in your field anymore. So now how do we build in the trust? How do we teach you how to look after your own needs? How do we teach you not to abandon yourself? And I do that through the 5 energy bodies as well. So we build it in physically, energetically, emotionally, and spiritually.
How much resistance do you get from people?
How much resistance do I get? I only really attract people that are open to it.
Right.
Yeah. If you're looking at my website and you just want me to crack your back, you're not phoning me up, are you? It's just, and so I used to do that for a long, long time, but now I want to have those deep conversations. I want to spend the time with you. I want to really understand what we're dealing with. And so I had to completely step away from that model because it just didn't allow that depth,
I think what's a key part of what you do is about self-empowerment, isn't it? One of the things that I heard you say, and I completely agree with you, is traditional healthcare can be so disempowering in so many respects. We have to be careful what we say because we're on a YouTube live stream and they have a medical misinformation policy that we don't want to breach. But we can talk about the idea of taking control of your body again. And there has to be an awareness, first of all, doesn't there, in order to be able to do that, and also a willingness to subject yourself to this process.
Yeah. And, I think a lot of people don't embark on it because they assume they're going to have to swim in the emotional soup. It's going to take years. It's going to be painful. You're going to have to pick at scabs that you don't want to look at. But if I give you an example that happened to me recently, I got a text message. It was completely innocent. And yet I noticed I felt irritated. Mm-hmm. So I know that's my energetic body. That's a mood and it's telling me something. So I turn around and I go, oh, I noticed that I'm feeling irritated in this moment. What specifically is irritating me?
Right.
This person in the text is asking me to do something at a time that I don't want to do it. I need to set a better boundary. So that whole process took me about 3 minutes flat. I didn't get into the martyr energy like I used to. I didn't get into the victim energy of, oh, now I have to do this thing that I don't want to do. So it becomes less personal, less emotional. And I didn't waste, loads of energy chuntering all afternoon because I had to do this thing. It means you're doing small things in the moment that compound to now, I have loads of energy because I'm not leaking it in places like that. Right. And now I can put it into, leading a movement, helping more people, whatever you want to put it into.
Right.
But it's small changes every day.
Well, my small change was realizing that I no longer wanted to react. I wanted to respond. And once I got that down pat, it's like it just changed everything for me because,
Absolutely.
I'm no longer literally just reacting in the heat of the moment. It's like I'm taking some considered time to think about this. How do I even want to respond? Is it worthy of a response? Because sometimes things simply aren't. Talk to me, Jackie, about the bliss body.
Oh, I don't want to say it's my favorite, but it's my favorite.
Well, you see, my darling dog Bliss passed away 4 years ago. But so the idea of the sense of bliss really means a lot to me, which is why I've chosen that particular one. But yes, it is one of your favorites, is it?
Well, I think most of us would want to spend more time in our bliss body. It's that sensation where you just know everything is going to be perfect. And most people imagine that you have to sit and you have to meditate for an hour to access your bliss body, but you don't. Once you understand that energy, you can access it all the time. There's a particular part of road that I drive, and as you come over the brow, the sun shines, you can see the rays just spreading across the land. It is the most beautiful thing. And sometimes if you just hit it right, you come over that brow, got your sunglasses on, the perfect song is on. That's you in your bliss body. Oh, yeah. In that moment, you just lean back and everything is perfect. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing to change. There's nothing to do. You just let it soak in. And so, like you say, imagine responding to life from that place. That would be very different. And most people are trying to access it. But if you are distracted by pain in your physical body, that energy is more dense. So it's going to need your attention before you can feel the subtle energy in your bliss body. Or if you're being dysregulated by emotional anger, that's going to take your attention. And so that's why you strategically work through them so that all of those energy bodies get to dial down and then you just get to soak in the bliss.
I love that moment. I have that moment when it is about 6-7 o'clock in the evening and the sun is going across our conservatory and it's so incredibly beautiful. And it just reminded me of that. The sun is incredibly powerful. No wonder they keep trying to block it.
Yeah.
That is the reality, isn't it? Catherine said, that she feels so overwhelmed. How do you deal with people who feel overwhelmed?
Overwhelm is something that I know very, very well. And number one would be, what can you take off your plate? So I know that when I was deep in my overwhelm, I was putting my hand up for things that were nothing to do with me. I was offering to help and pick up slack and do all sorts of things that didn't amplify my genius, my purpose, my mission here. And so when you're deep in that overwhelm, just see what you can offload that's not important to do right now. Obviously, there'll be things that you still have to do, and just create that space for yourself. Like you say, you need the pause to be able to see clearly. I was really deep in that for a long time, and I just kept saying, I need space, I need space. So yeah, see if you can create that space for the emotionally intelligent answers to come through. So they come from your wisdom body, and that needs you to have that space to just let your mind drift. And when you're in overwhelm, you just don't have that, do you?
I think one of the really vital messages that you carry also is that we don't have to heal in isolation, right? We can reach out.
Absolutely. We are not supposed to do this alone. And the circles that I'm moving in at the moment just absolutely make my heart expand, because it's no longer this stepping on each other kind of energy. There's a real collaboration. I always say we're rising together. I've figured out this piece of the puzzle. Let me help you with it. And that's the sensation that's happening now, that we're really in community helping each other.
I think some of the reluctance that people have and some of the cynicism is we're not being raised in a spiritual world. We are being told to deny our spirituality, our sixth sense, our gut instinct, our solar plexus, all of those things. And your whole thing is about getting in touch with who we really are.
Just getting back into the body. It is just the most exquisite, sensitive feedback loop. I describe it as, if anyone remembers that Buzzwire game. So there's the wire and it's connected to a little circuit and you have to pass the circle over it. Well, I always think that, you know, your purpose, your mission in this life is that end destination. And you put in all the kind of peaks and troughs. You put in all the people you would have to meet, all the experiences you would have to go through to gain the knowledge to complete your mission. And so as we pass that wire over in life, every time we stray from our path, we get that little reminder from one of our energy bodies. And once we dial into that, you take so much power back. So now you're not having to go and see a body worker for this, an energy worker for that, you know, a psychotherapist for the other. You can do this yourself. A lot of it you can do yourself by just noticing the feedback that you're getting.
We've got a link to your website, which we'll get in the comments so people can check you out. But finally, Jackie, talk to me just about happiness. Is it a journey or a destination?
That is a tough one.
It is.
I'm all about the process, I think. All about the journey, because I've been, like so many of us, stuck in that force energy. And for a long time now, probably about 2 years now, I've literally been following what excites me. I've been led by my soul, and I just keep stepping on the next lily pad that presents itself to me that feels right. So I actually don't know the destination. I'm just, you know, really in the process and really in the journey. So
there's nothing wrong with that. At least you're in the present. We love that. Wayne says, we love you, Jax. Everybody, this is Jackie Cowie. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Take excellent care of yourself. Wonderful energy. Loving your energy. Have a really brilliant week. Take care. Bye. Jackie Cowie, everybody. Yes, absolutely. Listen, guys, I understand some of you. Some of you are so cynical about that. Catherine believes in exchanging energy. And Beyond Belief says word soup about energies. Beyond Belief is very cynical all the way down here. But Jackie, what a lovely lady. Thank you, says Trudy. Right, let me get back on to a track that I wanted to cover. I found something out this weekend that I didn't know before. And I think it might have been Duchess, who is somebody that I follow on Twitter. And she made a comment. And I followed that and I researched it. And it's like, oh my God, it's actually true. So here's the thing, right? In an occasional series of, well, I never knew that. You know, Carol Middleton, mother of Kate Middleton, woman who would be queen, who disappeared for, what I know, 6 months. Well, it turns out, so here's the thing. We were always told the backstory of Kate Middleton was that she came from a real kind of working class family. They were one of us and they were marrying into royals and all of this kind of stuff, right? Much was made of these so-called working class roots. The fact that Carol had been an air hostess and her and her husband ran a party planning business. But this weekend, I found out that thing that I kind of always knew was there. First, let me say this. You know how many American presidents are linked to British royalty, right? Right? I mean, that's a thing. We know that. Well, it turns out that so is Carol Middleton. And I don't mean by her daughter marrying the man who would be king. Carol is actually, before marriage, a goldsmith and a distant relative of the Queen Mother. Look at that. The mainstream media made the whole big deal of these are working class people. They are one of us marrying into royalty. None of it is true because Kate's father, Michael Francis Middleton, was actually born to a wealthy Yorkshire family with ties also to the British aristocracy. It's always the same way, isn't it? We're always told that these are kind of, you know, like one of us. They're commoners. No, they're not. Absolutely not. It's a lie. Yes, please hit the like, fam. London lady, what's that? All that fluff and stuff. London lady, thanks. Yes, milkshake way. Yes, absolutely. Her name is really Carol Goldsmith, and she is not the working class pleb that we were led to believe. It's a lie, right? It's a lie. Yes, she is related to the Goldsmiths. Absolutely. She's and also a distant relative of the Queen Mother. Geoengineering. Yes, I am starting to believe that no one gets in unless they actually, have something to offer like this. Let's talk geoengineering just briefly. Rebecca wrote in. Good morning, Rebecca. And also Stephen and Alan and Tally and Jordan and more. Keep sending your pictures, please. I am definitely going to be putting together something. I have to put together something because your pictures from all over the world will eventually amount to something. Right. And Rebecca said, loving your new breakfast show. You said to keep sending photos. This one is from Cambridgeshire tonight. We've had normal sky all day. Suddenly, this huge patch has appeared. Didn't even see them doing it. And when you look at it, and I zoomed in, and you can clearly, these are not clouds. These are not chemtrails. These people think we're absolute idiots, don't they? We're not idiots. No, Derek, I don't know whether it was an arranged marriage. That is a blooming good question. That's a very good question. But yes, please keep sending in your geoengineering pictures because like Rebecca, I think what we need is we need a stash of evidence, don't we? We need a stash of evidence. We need to compile it and we need to find out who can actually do something about it without gaslighting us on an almost constant basis. Okay. Want to briefly talk about Kevin Spacey. Did anyone see that quite recently that Kevin Spacey, Hollywood star, was given the red carpet treatment by Piers Morgan? And to be able to say that he was handsy as if it was no big deal. It's a huge deal when you are the star on set and you have power to get rid of people if they rebuff you, if you don't comply. Vox did a piece recently about Kevin Spacey. There are 50 plus misconduct allegations against Kevin Spacey. They span nearly half a century. And frankly, they paint a picture of a serial predator. They do, starting in 1977 and going right up to 2021. Mostly young females, but there is the occasional female thrown in for good measure. There was a recent Channel 4 documentary, Spacey Unmasked, and it collected more new accounts from some of Spacey's alleged survivors. And what was interesting, of course, were the people who came out batting for Kevin Spacey. Don't forget, Kevin Spacey was recently cleared in a court case. And that was when his Hollywood mates came out en masse. This included Sharon Stone. Now, I don't know about you, but all I remember about Sharon Stone's Hollywood career is she showed us her whatnot and made millions from it. The other person to come out batting for Kevin Spacey is Stephen Fry. I'm going to say it. I know some people think Stephen Fry is a national treasure, but I'm going to be straight here. There is something about that man that gives me the ick. Oh, yes. I don't know what it is as such, but he creeps me out. Let's call it a sixth sense about him. And no, it's not because he's gay, because as I think many of you know, I've always been a gay ally. It's nothing to do with that. It's to do with something about Stephen Fry that my solar plexus doesn't like. So I wasn't at all surprised to hear that he came out batting for Kevin Spacey, because he always seems to be sort of on the different side of the fence to me, including about C19 as one example. And I also know that Kevin Spacey's brother, Randy Fowler, has given an interview this weekend to Emma Catherine. Emma Catherine is on X. She's also known, aka Emmapreneur. She speaks to lots of people about SRA. And I, for one, cannot wait to hear her interview with Randy, Kevin Spacey's brother. I think that is going to be very interesting indeed. Let's have a look at some of these comments. Let's have a look at them. No, not feeling him, Julie. Not feeling him at all. Yes, it's fine. Old Kev only did it to boys and one girl, Cooper. But yeah, I take your point. Timmy says he's a raging communist. Monopods finds him utterly repulsive. There is something I just don't gel with about that man, really. I had a fascinating conversation on Friday with a doctor. In fact, it was gobsmacking. And we got talking about how many services are being removed from the NHS, including podiatry as one example. And I told her I understood about the health service and about the Health and Social Care Bill from 2012 when they were working to privatise the NHS. And she said that in days gone by, when there were less treatments available, it was cheaper to run the NHS. But she said to me that the current model cannot last. She was very clear about it. She said, like in days gone by when they could like prescribe an aspirin, it was fine. It was all workable and doable. But she said now the cost of treatments are so high that it is absolutely a case of who should we give treatment to and who we shouldn't, and who should survive and who shouldn't. She said it's awful, but that is the truth. That's where we are. And then she said something that threw me, right? Absolutely threw me. She said that cancer treatments have become so expensive that they are essentially taking over almost the entire budget. She said that per patient, we're sometimes looking at a minimum of £200,000. And I said, yeah, but what we're dealing with here is the greed of the pharmaceutical industry. And this is exactly why people need to seek more natural solutions, right? The dependency on iatrogenic medicine is impacting more than our health. Yes, HK Very, it is very difficult to get a doctor's appointment. It actually took me 3 weeks to get a doctor's appointment just for a routine appointment. Did Judi Dench also defend Spacey? HK Very, that's interesting. Jocelyn says they give false hope for those waiting for operations. Yeah, Anne-Marie, that I found that absolutely scandalous. I mean, I said to her, but you know, the thing is that I, as a taxpayer, I pay into it because I really believe in our National Health Service. And I said, so what we're going to end up with is we'll end up with a privatized system and I'm still paying for it, right? Because eventually what they want to do is an American style insurance system. They've been pushing it for a very long time. And in answer to the person's question of where do you send your geoengineering pictures, it's to, here it is, Shin's put it, Sonia Poulton at sky.com. Thank you so much, Shin. Really appreciate that. I've got some more things that I want to work through. I've done that. The Eric Gill statue outside the BBC. I'm sure you know it. Eric Gill, it was commissioned by Sir John Leith decades ago. Eric Gill has a very interesting history. I actually made a video, which is on YouTube, about Eric Gill and that statue, but I think you know the one I mean. It is of the man and the boy. And again, I have to be careful. I'm on YouTube. Feel free to look at my channel and look at it. But anyway, the BBC, people hate that statue. They hate it. And with good reason. A man got up there recently and he attempted to chisel away at it. It's horrible. It actually is horrible. It reminds us exactly why Jimmy Savile was getting away with it for a very long time at the BBC. Anyway, the BBC, rather than remove it, and I know there are issues with removing statues, but I think some statues have to come down, especially with the history of Eric Gill, right? The BBC, rather than remove that statue, are now spending £89,000 of public money to build protection around it, rather than do the decent thing and tear it down. So the fact is the BBC has not changed since Savile. Don't be fooled, right? Absolutely don't be fooled. Have you, monopods? So many of us have yelled special messages to that vile statue. I hear you. And Pink Diamond said, I think we would be better off having a French-style healthcare system than an American one. What is a French-style care system? Somebody tell me. That's interesting. 2 new words that I must have heard this before, but for some reason it didn't actually filter in. But I was having a conversation with yesterday. They used it and I was like, say that again. And it's planned obsolescence. Are you familiar with planned obsolescence? So planned obsolescence is things like your phone is only going to last so long, and it's already been planned that way. Your TV is only going to last so long, and it has been planned that way in order to be able to bring in more new models. But you know what is not part of planned obsolescence? And that is good old-fashioned furniture like I have in the background. There I actually have that chair. I got that chair off eBay. And it turned out it was an actually antique dealer, and I got it for 12 quid. And then behind me is actually a table, an antique table that belonged to my mum. And that has been going on forever. So those things are not subject to planned obsolescence. So it looks like a lot of electrical equipment is the whole issue of planned obsolescence, right? Yes, hell, do I have to say the statue does appear to hold some kind of status for them. Yeah. And it's alarming, isn't it? Frankly, it's alarming. I know I have some more bits that I wanted to cover. Anybody see that video that Bob Geldof made of Andrew Mitchell? For Andrew Mitchell, of course, is standing for Parliament again. Infamously, Andrew Mitchell was involved in the whole Plebgate thing, sued the Sun, lost his case. You know, Bob Geldof came out and said, I've been friends with Andrew for 15 years or so. He said they had a shared interest in helping the poor people of the world. How noble. I met Bob Geldof about 4 years ago in a Chelsea restaurant. I was having a business lunch and he came in and sat talking with us. And I found him, frankly, to be one of the rudest people I had encountered in a very long time. He was very snippy and he just had this arrogance about him, right? And I don't actually remember what it was he was being particularly arrogant about, but just his whole vibe was off. I went to Live Aid, incidentally. I know that was Bob Geldof's big thing with mid-year. Live Aid, obviously all around the world. In the 80s, I went to Live Aid. I ended up leaving my job because my boss wouldn't let me take the morning off in order to be able to go and get a Live Aid ticket. But I went to Live Aid and got pictures to prove it. And actually, it was Live Aid that really made Bob Geldof. I know that he'd been huge in Boomtown Rats, but the fact is, by the time that Live Aid came along, he was then just kind of like Paulie Yates's husband and a bit of a scruffy pop star. And after Live Aid, that was when he, like absolutely blew up in TV production, huge TV company and all of that sort of stuff. So, and we all know the problems that came from Live Aid and the problems about giving money to African dictators. And yes, so yeah, that's interesting that he was out there batting for him. Right, what else? What's going on? Kat says private healthcare is not for the best. It is only safe for minor issues. For bigger procedures, being a private patient in a NHS hospital is a safer option. Yes, Trudy, I love Live Aid too. And but the thing is, though, Kat, it's not everybody can afford private healthcare, can they? And that is the problem. I was offered it on Friday and I said, no, thank you. I shall wait for an appointment under the NHS because I pay for the service. And that's that. People don't like that when you say that, but that is a fact. Let me quickly double check. I am still working on this HS2 investigation because I think that's fascinating. Lucy Letby, interesting. Just a very quick update. Friday was the closing arguments from the prosecution. Lucy Letby, of course, is being subject to a retrial on a single count of the attempted murder of baby K. Lucy Letby will be giving evidence today. In fact, I believe it's probably just started 10:30 this morning, Manchester Crown Court, and she'll also possibly be giving evidence tomorrow. Court is not sitting Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, and it is likely the jury will start deliberation next Monday on July the 1st. This is an interesting case to me, a very interesting case, and I am fascinated by it, and I absolutely understand why people have many issues with it. So I will keep you updated on that. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all that fluff and stuff. I don't like Mondays. That was based on the schoolgirl from America who obviously she went to class and shot her classmates, right? Where are Rage Against the Non-Vaccinated playing this summer? That's interesting. Rage Against the Machine. I mean, honestly, so many artists were just absolute disappointments, weren't they, during that period? Absolute disappointments. So let me just double check. That we've done everything. We've covered everything this morning. And one thing that I want to refer to is the state. Oh, somebody has asked me to look into Brittany Murphy and Simon Monjack. I have looked into them before. And that's Pip. Pip, let me address that on Friday. Pip wrote to me. She said, Sonia, don't you think the Brittany Murphy story is weird? It has never sat well with me. And then after Brittany died, her husband died shortly after. What do you think? Well, me personally, I'm still haunted by that story. I occasionally think of Brittany Murphy, and there's lots of interesting twists and turns in that story. So we will be addressing that on Friday. Oh, yes, we will. Right. What else? What else? What else? What else? I think I've pretty much covered everything. So I now want to just tackle the power of indignation. Someone recently commented that they thought I was brave for doing the things I do. I told them I wasn't brave, but I am indignant. I hate injustices, all injustices. I cover many areas, but injustice is usually the thing that binds them all together. And I continue doing what I'm doing because I'm just furious that more hasn't been done, whether that's about the sort of dangerous creeps within the British establishment or experimental jabs. So I wanted to end today's stream talking about the power of being indignant. Indignant is the feeling or of showing anger because something is unjust or unworthy in this world. And it's kind of like people can become indignant at the accusation of being indignant, but not me. I wear it like a badge, right? Some people also confuse indignation and anger. There is a moral aspect to both of them. Someone did something bad and it must be addressed. The difference is that for anger, the action is usually personal. You did something bad to me, as one example, whereas indignant is bad in a more kind of general sense, for instance, in terms of society and the world. And indignation is that feeling when someone's actions goes against your moral compass. You can't believe that a person would do something like this, and you have the urge to speak out about what this person did. It's also closely attached to outrage. And you feel indignation when someone crosses the line of what you think is morally right or acceptable. For example, you might see a car speeding in a residential area, or you might see somebody queue jump, or you might see a celebrity being paid Uber bucks in order to be able to promote experimental mRNA or whatever, but you can become indignant about it. And it can be evoked by events that are taking place and that have nothing at all to do with you, but your sense of injustice is triggered. And so I actually think indignation is a really good thing because it actually shows that you actually care about something beyond yourself. And I was looking into the studies of indignation, and they were actually, it turns out that researchers have actually identified 5 themes that are kind of relevant and inherent when we're feeling indignant. And one is the theme of harm. So, for example, if you see somebody being hurt, you become indignant. Fairness. If you see somebody being taken for a ride, if you see people who are claiming to be one thing to the public eye, but they're really something else, you know, so yeah, fairness. Then there is an issue of in-group loyalty. So, for example, if you hear somebody talking bad about somebody you like or about a colleague, then there is the respect for authority. An example of that is, I don't know, pupils making fun of teachers, and other pupils can become indignant about that. Yes, they can. And then there is purity. This is what research has discovered, that so for example, if somebody's somebody very public, you discover that they've been kind of like sleeping around endlessly or have really loose morals, so there is a purity attached to it. And everyone experiences indignation differently, right? Some people feel the need to take action against it, and that's where you get sort of campaigns and activism as one example. Even kind of writing about it, taking social media as a form of activism to show your indignation. And as I say, we are often indignant about things that are not to do with us. But what happens in indignation is it increases the urge to speak out about the wrongdoing that you've seen, right? There is a feeling of, I am not letting this person get away with it, right? But the thing is that people get so mad when others get indignant. So, for example, if you speak out about the kind of like rainbow agenda, people get really mad about that. But why? Why are they getting mad? right? I'm indignant about it because I don't like to see children indoctrinated. So that makes me indignant, right? And some people really, frankly, are just so brainwashed that they can't see they are supporting globalist agendas which are designed to destroy us. So I think indignation is a fantastic thing. Oh, Sam, indignation and anger is almost overwhelming for me. No, listen, Sam, here's the thing, right? Is that I completely get it. There was a time when I just found the world so awful that I was just like, I don't know if I can even cope in this. I used to sometimes think that I was just a bit too kind of fragile and sensitive for the world. But the truth is we're needed here. I don't believe for a second that this is some blip or some coincidence. It takes an awful lot for people to be born. There are many reasons that stops actual babies being born, right? Actually coming into the world. So if you're born, chances are it's a miracle. It's not called a miracle for no reason, right? But here's the thing is that in terms of my indignation, I'm one of those people that the more people come for me, the louder I become. I'm built that way. It's a blip. These people need to learn about it, right? They need to realize this. So indignation, I keep saying it wrong, is to me something really important. I don't think it is something that we should shy away from. And I agree with you beyond belief is talking about how some people do not have the opportunity to be indignant because their lives might depend on it. They may be so sick and ill that we have to be indignant on their behalf, right? Good, Space Cat. You're very welcome. This is very helpful for me. Thank you. Catherine, do you know what? I'm no longer convinced that people are too sensitive for their own good, and don't take that in the wrong way. I literally used to say that myself, but I think you've been made exactly the way you're supposed to be to bring your very special blend into this world. And so, you know, the point is that I think that sensitive people are incredible. And there's a reason you've been given that extra sensitivity. Long runs the fox, as they say. My heart goes out to you. What's happening with Pauline? I've had a terrible time with them. It makes you ill from the stress of it. I do not know what you're talking about, but God bless you. Is it to do with DWP? Yes, Healing the Silence. We will talk about DWP, the Department of Work and Pensions. Plenty for people to be indignant about. The way that they have often, for over the last 10 years at least, come after sick and disabled people is a cause of indignation. Right, on that note, lovely people, we are out of here for Monday. I love you loads. Thank you for joining us today. As I say before, thank you. Keep your emails coming. Keep your geoengineering pictures coming. Keep your subject suggestions coming. And just, you know, enjoy the weather as much as you humanly can. Enjoy your life. Enjoy yourself. I can't say that enough. There are so many distractions to make us not find joy in this life. And one of the reasons I asked Jackie about happiness, whether it's a journey or a destination, is I truly believe now that it is actually both, but the journey is absolutely vital. It's utterly vital. And look, I just want to end on one of my favorite quotes because a company approached me at the end of last week, and they offered quite a lot of money to get behind this breakfast show. And I turned them down because I don't know who they are and I don't like where they're coming from. And the fact is, nobody has ever been able to buy my integrity when it comes to journalism. Nope. Not one person. You can see that from my history. When people are testing my integrity, I walk. So that's why I love doing what I'm doing here. So thank you again to everybody who has contributed to this in whatever way possible. And I'm going to end on one of my favorite quotes. I love you all in the comments. Yes, Pauline. My mummy was, I don't know if she was actually born in Tredegar, but she was certainly raised in Tredegar. Yes, Pauline, absolutely. So one of my favorite quotes, I know you're going to love it. And that is, the question isn't who's going to let me, it's who is going to stop me. And on that note, have a fantastic week, you gorgeous, glorious people. I will see you Friday. Bless you all.